Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Today, I'm joined by Jake Kopstick, our resident college expert. And we are going to start off by doing our college notebook, and then we're going to move on to have an interview with UC Irvine big man Bent Leuchten. And that should be fun. And then after that, we're going to talk some NBA. And yeah, so let's get to it, Jake. I guess the first thing we got to talk about, I don't think there's much we can add to this story, but Bronny James, high recruit, headed to USC, suffered cardiac arrest, and I guess we know he seemed seemingly okay. The last thing I heard, there was a doctor, I think it was a USC doctor. I read an article where he said, now it comes down to determining if it's one of three things. They said, is this something that he is born with? Does he have a heart defect? And then he went into the two possibilities were different kinds of heart defects. One where maybe he'd never play again, and then one where they can manage it. And then the third option was, or is this something that's come about from, say, trauma to the chest, or something like the stuff that's caused by COVID? Goodness gracious. Anyway, I'm drawing a blank, but COVID can cause this heart infection. Basically Keontae Johnson had that infection. Now, whether he got it from COVID or not is unclear, but he did have that infection. So it took him 2 years to get back on the court. So, and I guess I haven't heard one thing or the other besides the fact that he's doing well and feeling fine about his career at USC.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no doctor. I'm very far from it. I'm not going to act like I can add anything more to what you said there. But, obviously this is scary when it happens. And, of course, last summer, this happened to Vince Iwuchukwu. And he had a cardiac arrest, and he had a heart condition during practice before the season started. So, hope I'm sure they're just totally coincidental, but nonetheless, very, very scary that this happened at the same school. I'm sure they were probably a little bit more prepared for something like this to happen, which is good. And in the case of Bronny, making sure that he's okay, he gets rushed to the hospital. They have any equipment that they need on, in house to make sure that something like this can be dealt with. But yeah, very, very scary. Was excited to watch him play, and hopefully maybe he can still hit the court. I would imagine he probably has to take a year off with something like this happening.
Well, Iwuchukwu, had his happen around the same time of year, and he managed to get back on the court, I believe, in January.
Yeah, so hopefully that ends up being the case here. I was really excited to watch him on the defensive end and continue to grow offensively as well. But yeah, huge loss here if that's what the case is, but at the end of the day, that's completely beside the point. Whether how he affects the team, we just hope that his health is okay and that he can get back on the court at some point.
Of course. All right, so moving on, the other big story is Colorado is going to be joining the Big 12 for 2024. For those who are confused, Oklahoma and Texas will be there this year, and then they will be moving to the SEC next year. So the Big 12, with the 4 incoming teams from the American Conference, will be up to 14 this year. Next year, they will drop 2, but then gain Colorado, so then they'll be at 13. There's also discussion of them adding a 14th team, and the most recent team, I've seen a lot of names bandied about, and the most recent one is UConn, which has a lot of people in our neck of the woods going, come on, you got to be kidding me. Mm-hmm. Didn't UConn try this once before? And, didn't Pitt and Syracuse and all those other teams learn their lesson? The Big East is where it is, baby.
Exactly. I don't know why UConn would want to leave. They're the perfect fit for the Big East. However, that hurts them immensely in football. because obviously the Big East is not a football conference, and you have some of these teams that.
Connecticut has a football team?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Jim Moore is the coach. He used to coach at UCLA.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
They've never been relevant and never will be.
Yeah. I don't watch a ton of college football. At least didn't last year because I was working for Penn and didn't really get to watch much. But yeah, I mean they played Temple a couple years ago and Temple beat the brakes off with a team that really wasn't all that good. So yeah, football wise, I don't know why UConn would do something like this. But look, for Colorado to join, it's big for them. A lot of excitement around them with Deion Sanders coming in for football wise, which I think is a huge reason why this move was made. But the Pac-12 is obviously the TV deal has been up in the air. We've talked about this before, how the Pac-12 network right now is just a far inferior product to every other major conference, and even with the Atlantic 10 and the Mountain West that have deals on CBS where they have national broadcasts. However, the Pac-12 announced at least a proposal for a media rights deal. However, it was streaming centric through Apple TV, which I know has a lot of older folks upset because I know at least like in this area, I hate to change the subject here. Rob Manfred, in my opinion, does not really know what he's doing at all. He makes MLB games on Apple TV, makes them on Peacock. It makes it harder to access them. It makes it harder to watch them. And a lot of older folks in my area, and I'm sure across the country that are baseball fans, have a lot of trouble watching them because Peacock stinks. It's a horrible streaming service. If you try and watch it on your laptop or your phone, it buffers every couple seconds. It's terrible. And you make people pay for that. They have to log on, or they have to, if they have a smart TV, they have to figure out how to maneuver it. It's just I think you need a national television.
Well, not to mention, one part of the streaming thing. Part of it is you have to like be in order to for us. We only have a handful of guys that work for us, and we have to watch so much college basketball around the world. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if you start having them in areas where you can't see it with one TV provider, does that mean, people like us are going to have multiple TV providers? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that starts to get really pricey. So that's, go on.
You're right 100%. Like you need more apps, you need more streaming services. That's all more stuff you have to pay for. So according to an article by CBS Sports, some believe the Pac-12's offer from Apple stands at $20 million annually per school as a baseline. If accepted, Pac-12 programs would earn more than $10 million less per year than their Big 12 counterparts, which is another reason for this move. Even the deal, regardless, Colorado, if they join the Big 12, they're not missing out on a TV deal because they're going to make way more in the Big 12.
Right.
However, incentives could reportedly bump the annual payouts to be competitive with those earned by Big 12 and ACC teams as part of their respective deals. Pac-12 current media rights deal with ESPN and Fox expires at the conclusion of the upcoming athletic season. Any new agreement, would begin in the 2024 to 2025 season. There's still one more year about this, but this is why you see maybe like an Arizona and an Arizona State one out, why an Oregon one's out, why this entire conference might just collapse and they might go elsewhere. You could be making $30 million a year for your school just in TV.
Oh, I think it's
why would Colorado want to stay in the Pac-12?
I think it's a lot more in the Big Ten and SEC.
Well, the Big Ten's is worth billions of dollars.
No, but I mean per team, I think it's something like $60 million a year.
Yeah, it's exactly. So Colorado, if they want to make this move, which I think they're completely entitled to, I believe they also helped create the Big 12 and we're an original Big 12 team. Go ahead and do it. They're not going to miss the Pac-12. They will only play better competition, and they're going to make more money. And that's what it comes down to. The Pac-12 is going to end up dispersing and going away because this television deal hasn't come for a while. Colorado's athletic director, Rick George, was at the conference this week or last week, declined comment when he was asked about the TV deal. However, he did express frustration at the Pac-12's inability to put together a TV deal, saying he had no meeting scheduled with the league this week. So
they've drugged their feet on this forever.
Yeah, they've lagged behind every other conference in doing so.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yep, and it's been that way for years. And here's what I really hate about the Apple TV deal. Apparently, part of this agreement is that Ted Lasso has to coach each one of the teams at least one game a year.
I never even saw that show, to be quite honest with you.
I haven't either. I stole somebody's tweet. I thought it was a great tweet. I know what the show's about and stuff like that, but I don't have Apple TV. And if the Pac-12 goes to Apple TV, I don't think I'm gonna get Apple TV anyway.
I don't see myself like jumping at the chance to go get Apple TV just for the Pac-12 because it hasn't been that good. It's been one of the worst Power 5, Power 6 conferences the last couple of years for basketball.
One thing that nobody's talking about, but I keep on saying every time this conversation comes up, I think it's about time the Mountain West and Pac-12 start talking together.
I think that would be good because most of those Mountain West teams are also football schools.
Right.
So I think it worked out perfectly.
And get Gonzaga in that conversation as a non football member. You could have 14 or 16 teams, and Gonzaga could be. You could have 15 teams, and Gonzaga could be the 16th.
Yeah. There you go. Because look, you won football.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You can get Colorado State's been meh, but you can get them. Nevada's been competitive. They've had some good years. San Diego State's been competitive and has had some good years.
San Diego State had Marshall Falk.
San Diego State also had Donnell Pumphrey, who was I think he might be the all-time leading rusher in college. Maybe I think he was a 4-year guy. His little guy got drafted by the Eagles.
Falk was damn close to being that himself.
But regardless, they're good football schools. Now, they might be like mid-major football schools, but they're still D1 single-A football schools in addition to some solid basketball schools in there as well. So I think it's kind of a natural.
I mean, you can't tell me that Fresno State or Colorado State can't beat Arizona State or Arizona or
Fresno's another one.
Or Oregon State.
Oregon State's actually been solid in football, and now they have the guy from Clemson, DJ Uyunglele, coming in. So,
all right, let's get off football.
It's just kind of odd to be like, are you going to convince Oregon State, Arizona State, Washington State to start playing against Fresno State and Air Force? Is that something they want to do? I think that's where. Well, no,
I wouldn't expect that all the Mountain West teams would be kept.
Yeah. Some of them would
but
not.
You know what? There's some really nice conferences out there, that those schools could join and wouldn't be at any disadvantage except for maybe financially. But like the WAC, for example, the Big West, Big Sky, or I don't know. You could move them around. I
agree.
All right, so let's move on. Memphis had some interesting things go on over the last week or so, and that starts off with is it Tafali?
To fail.
To fail. Oh, okay.
I think so.
What a terrible name, to fail.
T-fail, something like that.
I thought it was Folly. Leonard, who was one of their better incoming transfers, a real stat sheet stuffing forward, can do a little bit of everything except shoot. That was the one thing, but he was a decent rebounder, decent passer, a really good defender, especially in terms of steals, block shots, athletic type of guy. And I was excited to see him move up from Middle Tennessee State to Memphis, but apparently he's turning pro. And I don't know what the story is there. This happened at the same time. The next player we're going to mention, which is Jaquan Walton, which has an interesting story. But, it coincided with Walton joining the team. So I'm thinking he was thinking, I'm not going to get the playing time that I wanted. Leonard is certainly, in my mind, very capable of playing for teams like in the B-Next League in Belgium, in the German League, maybe even Australia, if he so desires. That might be a little too high for him. Maybe even the G League. So we don't know where he's headed right now, but he will not be on Memphis, most likely because Jaquan Walton is decommitting from UCF, Central Florida, and going to Memphis. So you want to run with that story? Because that's an interesting tale of Walton's.
Yeah, so he was one of the first guys to actually transfer. He did it around like during the NCAA tournament, I believe. So he does it in the middle of the tournament, goes to Alabama from Wichita State. Then he gets arrested on second-degree possession of marijuana charges, which Alabama, being a more conservative state, they are a lot more tougher on marijuana and drugs than they are guns because he also had multiple loaded handguns in the car. Look, I mean, it's just the facts here. Tell me where I'm wrong.
It's crazy.
Tell me where I'm wrong. But he was arrested on possession of marijuana charges, also had loaded handguns in the car, but concealed carry of a handgun without a pistol permit became legal in Alabama on January 1st of this year, so he was not charged for that, but regardless, was arrested. And, you know, with Alabama and everything that happened there this year, when you see that a player was arrested and he also had loaded handguns in the car, that's not going to fly there. So Nate Oates then said shortly thereafter he was no longer being recruited and was not going to be a student athlete in Alabama this year. He then committed Jaquan Walton, that is, to Central Florida. And right as this Bail Leonard, or however you say his name, news happened, he was the one guy who immediately kind of slid right into that spot. Shout out to Trilly Donovan, had this one, said that there was some rumblings that a guy at Memphis might be leaving, but I hear his replacement will be on the way soon thereafter. And it ended up being Jaquan Walton, who is going to technically he's going to stay in the American Conference. He started at Wichita State in the AAC. Then he went to Bama in the SEC. Then he went to UCF, who's now in the Big 12, but was in the AAC. And he's going to land right back in the American at Memphis. So quite the summer, I guess, spring and summer for Jaquan Walton. But hey, he averaged 13.9 points, 5.5 boards, shot 40% from three on nearly 4 attempts a game. So
yeah, but guys on our draft board.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, not way up there, but he's on our draft board. I will say this: Memphis, what a collection of odd characters they have. Jordan Brown, who's been all over. Caleb Mills, who's been all over. David Jones, who's on his third school. Javon Quinterly, who we know has had some character questions in the past, and was also at Alabama when Quinterly was kicked off because he was on campus. Walton was when he got arrested. And DeAndre Williams, I still haven't gotten any quantification on what his status is. Was he in this draft? Is he still at Memphis?
He's trying to get another year.
Right, I know he is, but you know, in the meantime, did the NBA already? Was he considered a? Can he be eligible for next year's draft, or was he considered in this year's draft? Because he was still trying to get a decision when the draft took place. He should have been in the draft, and he can't stop him. He can't say, "Don't draft me." That doesn't work that way. So as far as I know, he's already been drafted. I wonder if this has ever happened before. If he plays for Memphis, has a player who's ever been in a draft played in college? It might actually open some interesting doors.
Yeah, never seen anything like it either. But I can't say I've ever seen a guy who's, you know, if he gets the waiver, if he's going to be 27 years old, I can't say I've ever seen a guy like that play college basketball either. So quite the saga here for him.
So now it's time for our West Virginia update. Go with it, Jake. You become a mountaineer. A pseudo mountaineer.
And if I've become a pseudo mountaineer, I've also become a pseudo St. John's Red Storm and a pseudo New Mexico State Aggie as well, because I have updates on these guys that's like the three things I think that have been constant with every episode we've done. We've at least talked about
pretty much.
And how about this for a treat? Even though it's August, we're still going to talk about all three of them today. So Jose Perez took his name out of the transfer portal. He will play next season for the Mountaineers and Josh Eilert. I'm rooting for this guy because the last 2 years he's gotten screwed. We talked about the Manhattan situation and then what happened this year with Huggins leaving, that is he going to have to transfer again? Is he, so late in the process? Who's going to want to make space for him? So I'm rooting for this guy. He's going to give West Virginia a big scoring forward, which is good. But like I said, I'm rooting for this guy because he's had so much stuff, so much, out of his control that's happened. So then we'll move on. Quinn Slazinski transfers to West Virginia from St. John's. He was originally at Iona last year, only appeared in 7 games last year due to an ankle injury, started 3 games, averaged 11.3 points, and 5.7 rebounds in those 7 games, can stretch the floor a little bit and shoot. Not a great 3-point shooter. I believe he shot around 30% last year through the 7 games. So a small sample size, but nonetheless, the numbers straight up weren't that good. But I like the energy and the fire this guy plays with. Talks a lot of trash on the court. I like what he's about, man. I like Quinn Slazinski, and again, he's going to give them a stretch forward that they kind of lost with Trey Mitchell. At least a bigger guy who can play the floor potentially, that can shoot a little bit and stretch the floor. He's going to give that to them. I think kind of what happened here was when Chris Ledlam transferred to St. John's and he stepped in, it became a numbers game, and Quinn Slazinski then decided to leave, goes to West Virginia where they need people, he's going to play. And for West Virginia, really, really quality pickup here, really late in July. So, yeah, I like the pickup of Quinn Slazinski. I like this guy's game. Just shame he got hurt because I think Iona would have been way, way better with him in there, giving them a stretch forward that they were kind of missing. And giving them an in-between guy who can play a little bit bigger and can play in the perimeter as well. But I like this guy's game. I like what he's about. Really quality pickup here for West Virginia.
So I'm going to let you get your St. John's update, even though we talked about Lednum going to the Johnnies last week. Any thoughts here?
I don't believe we did because I don't believe we did. But if we did,
you weren't
I'm
here.
sorry.
You were in Mexico.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was out of here. I was on vacation.
We did talk about it.
Okay, well, good to know then. But yeah, he's originally started in Tennessee, obviously, and if you watch him play and you squint, you probably think you're looking at Grant Williams because he's got broad shoulders. He's a strong guy that can take people off the dribble. Will step out and hit a 3 here and there, but he was also on a Harvard team that was very, very bad at shooting threes and was one of the worst in America. Not just the Ivy League, but in America in shooting the 3 ball. But how about Rick Pitino gets not only Jordan Dingle, but gets Chris Ledlam, gets 2 of the best players and 2 of the best scorers in the Ivy League to come to St. John's. Some experienced guys play the right way, can really score it down low, can step out and hit a shot. I really like his game, and this is another really, really big addition and a big splash late in the portal for Rick Pitino. They're going to have a lot of people on the roster. I've been hearing some stuff, seeing some stuff on Twitter that potentially there's some people that might not get a scholarship, but will have NIL money to cover them because of the scholarship. So I've seen that. Can't really confirm anything, but I've seen that, and I guess that seems to be the way to go because why would you have committed to St. John's if you realize, now I have to pay out-of-state tuition? Like if you're Cruz Davis and you're from Texas and you're like all of a sudden, I have to pay out-of-state tuition at St. John's, I would imagine they're probably getting some sort of stipend or something. But yeah, big addition late in the portal, even with a very crowded roster for the Johnnies.
All right, let's move on to Arkansas in their crowded roster. Actually, it's not as crowded as we thought because they're still adding people. Yeah.
So the first, this first move opened up the spot to pick up somebody else. So Keon Menafield, who transferred from Washington, averaged 10 points and 3 assists as a freshman at Washington last season, started 21 of their 32 games. He will be a non-scholarship redshirt this season, which opens up a spot for another player and another scholarship to come in. And that was filled by Denny J. Harris from Southern Miss. He's an athletic 6'7" forward, can grab some offensive rebounds, attack the basket a little bit. My only problem with this is, Rich, Keon Menafield being a smaller guy. Yes, there's a lot of guards here with Ebo Davis, Tremont Mark, Trevin Bazille, L. Ellis, Caleb Battle. There's a lot of guards on the roster, so that might be part of it. Is there's such a logjam that you open up a spot for a forward that you're able to play more freely, and you can just redshirt one of the guys who's a younger player. But Arkansas was 317th in 3-point percentage last season, And although they're bringing in guys that can make them, percentage-wise, these weren't world beaters. So to bring in a guy like Denny J. Harris, who can attack the basket a little bit off the catch, but he can't shoot.
Right.
I mean, according to Basketball Reference.
Yeah, they brought in a bunch of shot creators, but not necessarily knockdown three-point shooters.
Right. And I think that could be a problem, just as it was last year, because Arkansas did not shoot the three very well. But according to Sports Reference, this guy did not make a three at Southern Miss. So I don't know what's happening here. I guess they just wanted Harris that bad, but if this isn't a guy that's going to help them, fill a very glaring need for them, that Keon Mennefield would have been better suited to. So interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this before, where you have a guy that's willingly going to sit without a scholarship and redshirt. But it did open up a spot for Denny J. Harris to step in. So interesting little tidbit there for Arkansas. Like I said, I can't recall ever seeing that before.
All right, so we'll move on to another team in the SEC, and I just don't understand Kentucky. I just don't. They are bringing in big man Zvonimir Ivicic, and he is a twin. Both guys are over 7 feet, depending on where you look. Zvonimir is either 7'2" or 7'3". He's still only 19 years old. He's declared for the last 2 drafts, but he just hasn't been ultra productive at the pro level. He's been playing in the Adriatic League, also I believe the Montenegrin League. So a very raw, young, stretch 7-footer. Who was very highly regarded in Europe, but yet, and they must think highly regard themselves because they keep on putting their name in the draft, but the numbers at the pro level just do not add up for them being NBA ready. But as far as Kentucky goes, they should be ultra productive, but Kentucky already has 2 5-star. I mean, they have a top 5 recruit. What's the kid's name coming in? Can't think of it.
Wagner.
Yeah, no. The 7-footer.
Oh, Aaron Bradshaw.
Right. They have Bradshaw coming in, and then they have the kid from Leftover who was a 4 or 5-star, Onyenso. And by the way, Onyenso is playing again, so he's healthy again.
And Thiero as well.
Oh no! I'm sorry. It's the other way around. Onyenso is hurt right now, but it's the freshman's healthy. But where are these guys? Where are these guys going to play? Are they going to play 3 7-footers at once? I mean, they got Wagner coming in. They got some good leftovers, including Antonio Reeves. Help me out here, Jake. This leaves me speechless.
Yeah, and this is a really, really young team as well. It's going to have 7 or 8 freshmen on their team. So I don't know how they plan on platooning these guys. Also, don't forget they did bring in Trey Mitchell.
Right.
So they have him too.
Right. And he can play center. He can play center as well,
Yeah,
exactly.
He's
6'9", 6'10".
And being the experienced guy of the bunch, you would think that's going to be the guy that's going to start and play a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
So,
though he could play the 4 alongside a 7-footer.
Right. If they wanted to. So, yeah, I'm a little confused by this, but they're talented. They are very, very. There's a lot of talent here, no matter how young they are. With Rob Dillingham and DJ Wagner, they got guys that can score.
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Reeves, a proven guy that can shoot. I just think this team, being so young, will probably take their lumps early. But I would think that as the season goes on, and once we hit February and maybe March, maybe we have something here when we're like, hey, these guys have gotten a lot better. They've learned to play with each other. Maybe they could be a team in the tournament that can make some noise. But just a very, very young team that it's kind of confusing to look at and be like, Cal's had some teams full of loaded freshmen in the past, but I can't remember a team like this where it was pretty much like that's all we're bringing in and we're hardly bringing anything back.
Right.
You know
what it is. You know what it is. So many guys go to Kentucky, and whether they play well or not, I mean, let's take Chris Livingston for example. Chris Livingston was on the scale of just if you just look at his play this year in college basketball, you would say he was an average player at best. But because he goes to Kentucky, because he comes there with a 5-star rating, we sit there and analyze this film looking for the good stuff. Because we know that he played, he was outstanding in high school, and not doing anything for Calipari really means nothing anymore. You know what I'm saying? Because just not playing well at Kentucky, and it usually doesn't stop you from getting drafted. In fact, sometimes it seems to get you drafted, even if you play crap, crap-like. So, yeah. But my point of it is, who it's really unfair to is a player like Onyensu. He almost went into the portal when the portal first opened. In fact, he was in the portal, then came back out, and now you bring in this other guy. It's so unfair to the kids that are already on the team.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. To add a guy pretty much in August, while in the middle of, I think they are on an international trip or about
they were at that global. They were in that global jam in June, and now they may be on another trip. Who knows?
Yeah. So it's just very, very late to get a guy up to speed like this. Yeah. We'll see how much of a player Ivisic is in year one. But I saw this and was like, whoa, this is really late to be bringing a freshman on. Makes me think he might not play, if at all this year.
Yeah, but this is a kid who has pro aspirations.
Which makes it even, I guess, a little bit more confusing then.
Well, as I said, what he sees is, when people go to Kentucky, they get drafted, even if they don't play that much. That's what he's thinking. But, he might not play at all. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't understand the decision by the kid. I don't understand Calipari, and I really don't like the way Calipari does anything. And you know what? He sets himself up to fail too, and he's been doing it regularly. So, and Kentucky's not, he doesn't have a lifetime pass at Kentucky anymore. There's plenty of fans that are fed up with him. All right, so let's move on. Kansas loses another player. What's going on here?
Yeah, so Marcus Adams, who I guess you can call this a transfer, but he was an incoming 4-star 6'8" forward this year. He asked to be released from his letter of intent earlier this month, and he's going to be heading to Gonzaga, giving them a young guy who can come off the bench for them and play. But, you have Kansas that brings in Arterio Morris and Nick Timberlake, and of course Hunter Dickinson. We already saw Chris Johnson decommit and go to Texas this year. Like they brought in so many guys in the transfer portal, and then of course you have DeJuan Harris coming back, you have KJ Adams coming back. That young guys like this, I guess if they were promised that they would have a shot to play from day one, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, they're asking to be released. Like I said, we saw it with Chris Johnson, who is now going to be playing for Texas and is probably going to be playing for Texas and went somewhere to where he could have a role, even if it's coming off the bench. So that's what I think happened here with Marcus Adams, who's no different than the Chris Johnson situation.
All righty. By the way, you haven't mentioned anything how my new haircut makes me look like a North Korean dictator.
I think it looks good. I don't know if I go that far. I do think it looks good. Sorry for me for not acknowledging. Yeah.
Well, this is a podcast, and they need all the visual stimulation they can get. All right, so just a quick note on Northwestern's Boo Buie, their gunslinging point guard. He had right hand surgery, but is expected to be healthy by the fall. And now to Jake's New Mexico update. Go, Jake. What do we got? Did Greg Heyer get arrested again?
No, not quite. And let's make sure we say New Mexico State and not New Mexico, because New Mexico.
Oh yeah, I thought I threw the state in there. Yes, yes. New Mexico State is moving on, by the way, to Conference USA this year.
Yep. So they will be moving on, and oddly enough, Sam Houston State is also leaving the WAC with them, and Sam Houston State's head coach Jason Hooten will be the head coach of New Mexico State. However, which I hope this is the last time we talk about this. Greg Heyer looking to recoup some of his money from New Mexico State. He signed a 5-year contract last March that paid $300,000 a year, which, of course, if you can do math, which I hope I can right now, that equates to $1.5 million over the life of that contract. He's hoping to get some of that money back. He is looking to do so through voluntary, non-binding arbitration, meaning that he has the ability to pursue legal action if the arbitration decision does not go his way. However, it was in Heyer's last contract that any disputes be settled via binding arbitration, which does not allow for an appeal, and the decision made by an arbiter is legally binding. Essentially, he's asking the school, hey, I probably breached the contract by definition. And if we go to binding arbitration, then the decision is final. But if you would do this non-binding arbitration with me, you give me the ability to appeal if I don't get my way and I don't win. So he basically is asking to do this because the non-binding arbitration, which is not in his contract, allows him a better chance of recouping some of his money, which in my opinion is not a good look, because if he goes to an independent arbiter, he's not going to win because he very much breached that contract and hit on and basically broke every single rule that would have allowed this to happen. So there was
why would New Mexico State even consider this?
Well, that's the thing. It's in his contract that it has to be settled one way, but he at least offered, I guess. However, there was an article written today by Myron Metcalf from ESPN. It was literally published today, about 6 hours earlier than now. It's the headline of the article, Rich, being fired NMSU basketball coach says he was, in quotation marks, sacrificial lamb. I don't even know what else to say at this point. He said that he was fired with cause. So he was fired with cause in February. He accused the school of terminating him because it needed a, in quotes, sacrificial lamb after a series of incidents, according to arbitration documents obtained by ESPN.
So who is he being sacrificed for? That would be interesting. Satan himself?
Well, what doesn't really, I think the biggest thing in this article is that this doesn't look good on Mario Machia, who's the athletic director there. Because if you remember,
but how could the athletic director is like a step or two away from the situation where what's happening with Heyer's team is he's supposed to be the one in charge, responsible, and how could he throw this on the athletic director?
Well, the thing is, this doesn't look good because in this article, Heyer said he was with AD Mario Moccia at his house when he received a video that showed an October fight at a New Mexico State, New Mexico football game, which involved Mike Peake and New Mexico student Brandon Travis, which is kind of how the unfortunate incident of a New Mexico State's New Mexico student passing away, that whole thing happened. Heyer said the AD smiled and said, in quotes, smiled and said the video showed NMSU players, in quotes, whooping up on some Lobos. That's why that doesn't look good on.
Oh, right. But of all the things that happened, that was the least of it.
Yes.
And it would have been different if somebody else showed that video to the AD and Heyer wasn't aware of what happened at the football game. But you're saying Heyer himself showed him the video?
Yeah. They had seen the video. They were at someone's house.
Okay, that would be like I don't know. Let's say we're raising a child together. Right? We're two brothers and we're raising our younger brother. Okay, but I don't live at you watch. You're the main person who watches the child. Okay, and I am just like say helping you financially, but I live in a separate household. And I walk into the house one day and see that there's a gun on the kitchen table. And I say, Jake, you shouldn't have that gun out with kids in the house. Okay. So now I leave and something happens with that gun. Who's really responsible? I mean, yeah, I didn't do anything about it, but you're the one living in the house,
So yeah, I hope, like I said, hopefully this is the last time we can talk about this. But he's basically saying that he was he was the guy that had to go because he still is basically denying that he knew what was going on. Now, what was said in the article is due to Title IX laws, when a complaint like this is filed, they don't really tell anybody. And unfortunately, Greg Heyer, I guess, was left out of that. And that's why he's claiming he didn't know what was going on. But like reasonably, you should have known what was happening in your program. Like that's not out of reason or validity at all to say that with your basketball team that you've been with. And I get that it wasn't for a full year, but the time he was there was enough to know the guys and to know what was going on. And to now try and recoup some of this money, even after you have another job for this and for basically running one of the best mid-major programs in America into the ground. Like this is how you handle it. I don't like this one bit. But hopefully this is the last time we even talk about it. The arbitration probably won't take place until next year. So maybe we will have to talk about it in the near future.
I hear you.
This whole thing is a dumpster fire.
All right, we got a couple more things we're going to rattle off before we close the college notebook. We got some good news here. About one of the seemingly really good guys in college basketball, and that's Kansas State's Jerome Tang. So what do you got there, Jake?
So, yeah, he's finalizing a contract extension with Kansas State. Obviously, last year, really doesn't need an introduction, but I'll give it to you anyway. This team was picked dead last in the preseason Big 12 rankings, and all Jerome Tang did was be the head man on a team that went 26-10, got to the Elite Eight, and was a possession short of getting to the Final Four. So he so much deserved this. This comes after last year. He signed a 6-year, $14.1 million contract with a base salary of $2.1 million, which also has an annual increase that maxes out at 2.6. So he's already getting paid nicely as well. But Kansas State, I guess they love what they saw from day one. He seems like a guy that was very, very happy there. He's had a big program with a lot of tradition in a power conference. Why not? If you think this is
players seem to love him,
and you couldn't find a remotely bad thing about him from anybody. So I think this is perfect for both sides. This seems to be a final destination stop for Jerome Tang. That if you keep producing like this in a big conference at a school like Kansas State, he might be set and might not want to leave.
Right. I hope so. I hope so. All right. Another former Big 12 coach, Mark Adams, found himself a new job.
Yeah, he's going to be the assistant coach at East Carolina for Mike Schwartz. If you remember, so he was out. Obviously, Mark Adams was out of basketball. Well,
he resigned. I think he resigned to.
Yeah, he resigned last year, right before
under pressure, I guess you would say.
Yeah, for making racially insensitive comments.
Well, that's kind of taking things out of context. He read from the Bible, I believe, the Old Testament, and the words, when taken literally in today's society, could be considered racially insensitive.
Yeah, so I guess with Mark Adams being hired this quickly, clearly East Carolina didn't see that being that big of a deal. But here's what you can't dispute. This guy, Mark Adams, in his first season with Texas Tech, won Coach of the Year, got this team to the Sweet 16 where they unfortunately fell to Duke. Well, I'm a Duke fan, so not that unfortunately. To Duke in the Sweet 16, to a team that made the Final Four. And this guy, when he was on staff with, wherever he's been, whether it's been at the D2, the JUCO level, whether it was as Chris Beard's right-hand man, he's been known as that minister of defense. Almost like, say like Reggie White's old nickname.
No. He's definitely a defensive guru.
Exactly. So for a team like East Carolina that struggled defensively and just needs help in general because it's not really a basketball spot to be winning at, seems like a good fit for Mark Adams just so he can be the defensive coordinators essentially for you.
And now we have a change of name. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah, kind of confusing here. So the CAA, formerly known as the Colonial Athletic Association, is now going by the Coastal Athletic Association. They have the same letters. They will keep the same logo. They're just
I know what it's about because colonial's now a bad word, right? Okay.
Well, your words, not mine, but for what it's worth, you also had George Washington change their moniker to the Revolutionaries this offseason. They are no longer the George Washington Colonials or Colonels, however.
Right.
They are the Revolutionaries now. So I don't know if that plays into it, but little technicality for you.
Right. Okay.
And we'll end with kind of some unfortunate news. If you've been following anything going on in college football lately, the quarterback for Iowa State facing a potentially permanent loss of his college eligibility because of a gambling probe. And that unfortunately spilled over into the college basketball realm with Nebraska's Ahron Ulis, who last year was at Iowa. He was placing bets on a FanDuel account using a fake name. Anton Porter allegedly was this fake name, but placed more than 430 bets on NCAA football and basketball games, including at least one Iowa football game. He is now facing...
What about Iowa basketball?
That was not specified. I would imagine that was probably in there, but I think if you're betting on a school team, that probably doesn't bode well anyway, because I know there's strict laws.
So has he already been suspended, kicked out?
Not yet. There's
Here's
just
the
documents
thing:
that are kind of coming out about it.
if he bet on Iowa, they are going to tear that season apart. They're going to look at any of the games he bet on to see if there was. I mean, this could turn into something serious.
Exactly.
Not just for Ulis, but for Iowa.
Right, and that's exactly why a probe like this, can result in a permanent loss of your eligibility if you're found guilty of this. But the fact that he was under a fake name and was placing hundreds of wagers, including on teams at a school, this is exactly why, I don't think you're ever going to see anything close to a gaming or a gambling deal in with a school ever, because it will affect. If these guys see a way to make some money, now the pros can do it too, but the pros are also getting paid 6, 7, 8, 9 figures.
Yeah.
It's different. It's a total problem with the integrity of the game. So we'll have to monitor this. But you have a guy you have two guys at Power 5 schools in football and basketball that could be facing and unfortunately be made an example of, because this is the first time that I'm seing something like this. They could be made an example out of.
How did anybody find out about this if he was using?
I don't know. I mean, you probably have to link a bank card, and if that's the case, then they that paper trail, I guess, will follow you. But I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you
would have to be digging.
I don't know how you register under a fake name though for a gambling site, because I know there's like extreme regulations, and then you get taxed at the end of the year if you win a lot. Like I would imagine that you can't just fly like that, because then everybody would be making up fake names and would be depositing money. So
couldn't you do a prepaid credit card and do it that way? Or no, you need an account, don't you?
I don't know. I'm not a math or a money guy, and for all the books I'm on, I use my real name. So unfortunately,
right.
Couldn't tell you how you do it, but it doesn't sound like you can get away with it. I'll put it that way.
No, and if he bet on Iowa basketball, especially if he bet against his team, meaning that he planned on tanking, or at least could be accused of that would be awful.
Awful. So it's bad for everybody involved.
So we'll end on that note, and we'll move on to the NBA. Or no, actually, we'll move on to our interview with Bent Leuchten. So stick around for that. All right, today's special guest is Cal Irvine big man Bent Leuchten. I got that right? Leuchten, right? All right. All right, who is entering his junior year. Last season, among Big West players who saw at least 400 total minutes of action, he led the conference in true shooting percentage at 63.5, player efficiency rating of 27.1, and a plus-minus of 7.5. Bent also ranked second in offensive rating, 126.6. Third with a field goal percentage of 57.1. Also true rebounding percentage, he was third at 17.8. Defensive rating, he was third, 93.6, and he ranked fourth in block percentage of 4.9. Additionally, he was named to the Big West all academic team. Welcome, Bent. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And by the way, you are the first guest. This is our first episode of season 3. So you are our first guest of season 3. So kind of let's start from the beginning. You're listed at 7 foot 258, which I believe makes you the biggest guest we've ever had on the show. I think Kyler Kelly is taller. I think he's 7'1", but I don't think he weighed, I think he was less than 250. So, and you're also from the state of Bavaria in Germany. So how did it all start for you, and what ultimately led you to Cal Irvine?
Well, I started playing basketball at 7, which is pretty young in Germany, I would say, on average. And I just played. It was a lot of fun. My dad always played, so that's how I kind of got to the sport. And then I started playing at a little bit higher program in Munich, played first league under 19 and under 16 there. Then during COVID, I played 1 year of semi-professional in the German third league, because all the other leagues got shut down in Germany, aside from the top 3 leagues. And yeah, during that season, Irvine, I got some attention from them, and they reached out to me. And I just had a good connection with the coaches here and everybody that was here, so it was a pretty easy decision for me.
But as a child, I mean, what took you to basketball as opposed to football or another sport? I don't know what other sports are. I know football is very popular in Germany. But were you a tall child, or did your family play basketball? Or
yeah, my dad played, and he always took me to games as a kid. But then when I started school, because all my friends played soccer or football, I started playing football at first. But I just wasn't that great at it, so it wasn't that much fun. So I started playing basketball, and I just loved the sport, and it was way more fun than football for me. So
okay. And were you always tall? Were you always one of the taller kids?
Yeah, I was always one of the taller kids. I wasn't like as tall comparatively as I am now, but I was always one of the taller kids.
Okay. And so I have to ask, you're at Cal Irvine, and they have one of the more unique nicknames, the Anteaters. So I have to ask, have you ever at UC Irvine, have you ever seen a anteater? Because as far as I know, there's none in California.
No alive ones.
Never a live one. Okay.
Taxidermy.
All right. So for those who don't know, they kind of look like a wombat who got its nose stuck in a rice picking machine. But if that description helps at all. So specifically, where in Bavaria are you from? Bavaria is I believe the southwestern region of Germany.
Exactly. I'm from Karlsfeld. It's a little town just outside of Munich, so the biggest city in Bavaria.
Ah, okay. Yeah. And could you say the name again, please?
Karlsfeld.
Ah, okay. All right. And in being, had you been to America before attending school?
Yeah, my old high school or club team, because we don't really have high school teams, we all play club. So my club team did an annual America trip where they visited the LA area, Las Vegas, and I went on that twice before I came here.
Okay. And so how would you compare and contrast the two countries? I mean, what's glaring to you different that maybe you miss from home or don't miss from home that you enjoy here?
I mean, obviously I miss my friends and family back home. That's probably the biggest difference for me. But one thing I really noticed that I love about the people here, that they are way more outgoing and nicer to you just from first meeting them. That's probably the biggest difference to me. And the weather, obviously, the weather is so much better here.
Well, where you are, some portions the Pacific Northwest, that could be pretty rainy, like the UK and so forth. But all right, I'm going to pass you over to Jake for a few questions.
Okay, so Brett, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time as you ramp up towards getting into the season here. So you obviously said, you're playing for club teams, you're playing for professional teams. You did that at a really young age, starting at 16, and then you started playing with your clubs, playing with your national team as well. This summer, you participated in the Global Jam, playing for Germany, a team that had a couple young pros on it. So I was wondering if you could tell us about that experience a little bit, getting to play in the Global Jam for your home country.
Well, as a kid, I never was good enough to make like the under 16s and under 15s national teams. So it's always been a big goal of me to one day play for the men's national team. And the Global Jam was like the under 23 national team. So that's like the one step below the men's national team. We call it A2 in Germany. And so it was pretty obvious for me that I wanted to play in it when I got the chance. And then I found out that we were playing Kentucky and some high level competition from elsewhere in the world. So it was a very fun experience there, and the team was great. Got to meet a couple new guys, a bunch of the guys I already knew from before playing with or seeing them. So it was a fun time.
Awesome. And yeah, you actually led me into my next question here. Besides being on this show, which Rich likes to throw in there and, use his jokes, what are some of the highlights of your career been so far? It sounds like it's certainly one of them.
Yeah, for sure. Playing with the national team. Playing last year, I played the under 20 European Championships. That's always been a goal of mine to play in those. And probably the biggest highlight in America has been beating Oregon when they were ranked last year in the first game of the season. That was a great experience. And then them winning, obviously, the conference title in the regular season last year.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get a little bit into some about your game. So obviously, Rich gave you a nice lengthy intro, but all your stats about how you led the Big West in a bunch of different categories and were at the top of a bunch of those categories. The last season, you were very efficient in the post and around the rim via cuts and rolls. Although you didn't take a lot of jumpers, you were also very efficient with the shots when you had them. You were in the 85th percentile for points per shot. What aspects of your game have you been working on since last season? What have you been trying to improve? And what do you want to add to your game this year? Do you want to add some more jump shots? Are you planning on doing more pick and pop? What can we see new from you that's coming up this season?
I mean, one of the main points of emphasis that I've been working on with my coaches is getting my footwork better into my jump shots so I can take them quicker and out of more situations. So I don't just stand still at the 3-point line and wait for the ball, but move into shots and find spaces. And then another huge emphasis for me is being more dominant and more assertive down low in the post, just being more aggressive when I get the ball and try to be a dominant force down there.
So yeah, I like what you said about that footwork there, because watching some tape on you, you do have some really nifty moves down low and can use your feet well. So now that you want to use more of that, like you said, to step into shots, use some more footwork outside in the perimeter. Any post moves that you're trying to put to memory to use a bunch of times? Where did you kind of find that aspect of your game with that nifty post stuff to use your footwork, use some fakes? How did all that kind of get incorporated into your game?
Well, I got very lucky. I always had, I would say, a decent post game, but then when I was 16 or 15 probably, I met a coach in Germany who started coaching at my club. His name was Paulo Prestes. He's Brazilian and he got drafted sometime in the NBA in like the second round by the Timberwolves. And he was a big man and he taught me a lot of post moves. I worked with him pretty much every day. And that was always a huge emphasis of us. And he pretty much worked on me on every post move imaginable, got the footwork down, went over and over again. And that's kind of where the post move came from, I would say.
Okay.
I'm going to interrupt you. Did he teach you to use both hands? Because you really do. It doesn't seem to be a preference going right or left to me in your game. It's kind of unpredictable down there.
Yeah, no, he taught me like all kinds of counter moves and hook shots. So the different variants, just ways to get into my shots. And it helped me a lot, like especially the way he taught me to use my elbows and stuff like that was always very helpful.
Okay.
I'll let you continue then, Rich.
Oh, okay.
All right. Then. Yep. Go ahead.
All right. So last season, you finished tied with, Santa Barbara in the conference standings, and you earned the top seed in the Big West tourney. You were eventually knocked out by Cal State Fullerton. Went on to lose in the first round of the NIT to, ironically, Oregon, who you defeated earlier in the season. So that was about the only thing you could have done better, I would say, would have been, to win the conference tournament and move on to the NCAAs. I would assume that's the goal this season.
Yeah, that's for sure the goal. We've been working hard. We're going on our international trip next week, so looking forward to that. We're going to see the team in action the first time, and I think we might not have the names we had last year, but we definitely will be up there and we will be playing for the championship.
Right. Speaking of those names, you lost I think your two leading scorers in Dawson Baker and DJ Davis. Baker's going to BYU, Davis going to Butler. So I would expect you and Devin Tillis to be starting in the front court, PL Cockrell and Justin Hone to be in the backcourt. Have you worked out yet, who the fifth starter is going to be, and where does Dean Keller fit into the mix? And is there any other players you expect to emerge this season?
I mean, we haven't really talked about the roles that much yet. We kind of, whoever proves themselves will get that role. That's, I think, how our coaches like to do it. I mean, we got a bunch of guys who are ready to step up, I think. We had Langston who redshirted last year, Andre Henry, who's, in my opinion, probably the most underrated player in the entire Big West. He'll have a breakout year, I think. And Pierre's an experienced guy, which will make it easy for everybody else to step up. I mean, Justin has the starting experiences. We got some good freshmen coming in. Devin will hopefully be healthy the entire season, and he'll be great for us. And Dean fits in anywhere. He just does his job perfectly, always brings energy. It's a fun group to play with.
Right. And in the trip to Taiwan, who are you going to be facing on that trip? What competition will you be playing?
It's gonna be some good competition. I don't remember all the teams exactly, but I know it's the Qatari national team. I think the Saudi Arabian national team. We got like the winners of the Korean League, and there's, I think, the Japanese university team, some Taiwanese team, and it's some good pro competition. I think it's going to be good to see.
Okay, and I assume everyone's excited about that trip, huh?
Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. It's going to be a great.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so I got one more question. I'm going to pass you back to Jake, but I noted up top you were an all academic selection, but the school website right now says you're undeclared major. Have you picked a major yet?
Yeah, I just declared. That's why I'm going to do environmental science and policy.
Interesting. Usually, interesting. All right, Jake, I'm going to pass you over for the last couple.
Okay. Awesome. Love that major, by the way. I'm a big sustainability guy like myself, like recycling, not using plastic and stuff like that. So awesome stuff to hear. Unique major too. Instead of, usually just hear people are like, yeah, I'm business, I'm finance, I'm accounting, something monotonous like that. So good for you.
Yeah.
So we'll stay off the court here talking about school. Tell us about some of your interests outside of basketball. You mentioned back home you weren't much of a football player yourself, but off the court, how are you spending your free time?
I mean, a lot in the classroom, obviously, spending time with my friends and my girlfriend. And then I've played video games a lot. I've become more of a soccer guy now than I was in Germany, probably. I play FIFA a lot, play with my teammates. So that's probably my main free time that I do.
Okay. And who's your team of choice in FIFA?
Ooh. Team of choice, probably Borussia Mönchengladbach, but not if I actually want to win the game.
Well, if you want to win, then who are you taking?
I mean, the cheat code always is PSG, but I always like playing with Tottenham normally.
Wow, I'm a Chelsea guy, so I'm a little disappointed to hear that because Tottenham's nobody right now. Tottenham's nobody. But regardless, we'll move on. I want to ask you something. I think this is always interesting to ask people that are international players that aren't from America. This because basketball, really, since the Dream Team, has become a global game. You look at people that have won the major awards in the NBA recently. Joel Embiid just won MVP. Nikola Jokic won 2 in a row. Giannis has won the MVP. Luka Doncic has won Rookie of the Year. Pascal Siakam got Most Improved a couple years ago. It's truly a global game, and the world's best stars are on display in the NBA. And a lot of them are not from America, and they play basketball in other countries, and they come over here. It's really a global game now. So I wanted to ask you specifically in Germany, how big is basketball getting? And throughout your entire life, have you noticed it becoming way bigger than it has been?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time I really realized basketball was getting bigger is when everybody in my school started knowing who Dirk Nowitzki was, obviously. And when he won the championship in 2011, everybody in my school was like, "Oh, you know that guy?" I'm talking about basketball because I was really the only guy at my elementary school who knew basketball like that. But it's been growing. There's like more and more social media channels about it. More people start like talking about it. The German league is getting better and better. So yeah, it's definitely growing.
Okay, and then one more for you. I love that you brought up Dirk because he was one of the first basketball jerseys I ever got. I love Dirk. I love guys that can score in the mid range, and he was one of the best at it with the wonky fadeaways and the one footed shots. Like he was awesome. There wasn't many as good as Dirk Nowitzki in his heyday when scoring the mid range. So
Sure.
I want to ask you your favorite player in any sport, past or present. Is it Dirk or is it somebody else?
I mean, it's hard to go against Dirk. So probably favorite player, yeah, I would say Dirk. But these days, Jokic is very close to taking that title. So he's
Not
probably my favorite player right now.
not a bad second option at all. So does that mean before we let you go here, does that mean were you a Mavericks fan then? Were you watching the NBA? Did you become a Mavericks fan watching Dirk?
I mean, not really. I didn't really start watching the NBA till later than that because the games are always on at like 4 in the morning in Germany, so it's really hard to keep up with it. And when I really started watching the NBA was the year the Celtics had their playoffs runs with Isaiah Thomas.
Hmm.
So that was kind of the team I supported when I started watching the NBA.
Nice.
All right,
Well, I'll kick you back. I'll kick you back over to Rich then. Thank you, Ben.
Ben, I got one question that I always ask European guys, and you may not be a fan, but a lot of them are, surprisingly. And are you into F1?
Not really. I don't really know a lot about it, if I'm being honest.
Okay, all right. I just thought, Austria, has Red Bull. Right now, they're dominating the sport, so I thought you might be into that. But anyway, all right. Well, I really appreciate your time. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we'd love to have you back in the future. Hope you enjoy your trip. Hope you have a great season, you and the team. So yeah, think about coming back in the future.
Of course, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Ben.
Of course.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our NBA chat, and Doc is with us. He's got a sore throat and sounds really quiet today. And so we're not going to. I was going to ask you all about Cleveland and stuff, but I won't press you, Doc, on to talk. And of course, Cameron is with us as well. And the first topic today, and the biggest topic in the league, is Jaylen Brown. New Supermax extension, which is the highest contract, the biggest contract in the history of the NBA. I personally, and the way I would like to approach this subject is saying, I think there's something wrong with the way players are paid. Because to me, Jaylen Brown's a really good player. And I know this contract won't be the highest paid forever, but should he ever be the highest paid guy? I mean, even for a minute? I mean, we're talking about somebody who is going to be making in the high 50s. And I think 2 years from now, he'll be making over 60 million a year. And I don't even think he's a top 15 guy in the NBA.
Yeah, it is a crazy situation. It just so happened that his contract was up first. Like you said, there's going to be plenty of others who make more than that. Probably next year, Tatum going to make more than him with the new CBA. But yeah, the NBA need to do what baseball does in terms of baseball have like a rule where they sit down with the player and show them their stats. And if your stats and your play don't equal up to the pay you asking for, you don't get it. So the NBA probably need to put that rule in to stop these NBA players from stop overpricing themselves.
Now his contract is based on some kind of formula, right?
It is. Yeah. So the Supermax, you have to qualify with a few different criteria. Among that is like playoff performance, playoff appearances, stats, all-star appearances, I think, are in there. But the big one was All NBA. That was the one that that was the check that he hadn't sort of marked as far as his resume for a Supermax, and he got that this past season, right? I mean, you can argue, he probably wouldn't have gotten it if not for a few injuries around the league.
Right.
I think like a guy like Devin Booker might probably would have taken his spot. But by the criteria that the NBA set aside for Supermax, he qualified, and that's the going rate for guys that qualify.
So I believe because of these formulas, by the way, I think Desmond Bane and Tyler Halliburton, because it's a formula, are getting paid the exact same money. They
are getting paid on a different max, though.
But they're making the same amount of money. Isn't that kind of ridiculous? I mean, that's like giving, I don't know, Drew Bledsoe and Tom Brady the same money. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's kind of like the thing that you have to deal with salary cap, right? I mean, it's the fact that the NBA has the salary cap, in my opinion, is what keeps the league competitive.
Right.
You otherwise, I mean, we still have it, teams like the Lakers going out and paying crazy money to acquire free agents, at the expense of teams like San Antonio or Milwaukee. But what the Supermax was supposed to do is to help keep superstars in their, drafted location. I think it's done that pretty well. I think the issue now is that guys are just going to sign the contract, because if they choose to sign as free agents elsewhere, they're giving up on multiple years and multiple millions. I mean, we're talking like in the scale of like $30 or $40 million, versus what they can do is just sign the contract, sign the Supermax, and then beg for a trade later on the backside, and then still maintain the Supermax.
Well, that's the formula. Damian Lillard just did that, right?
Yeah,
that's the formula.
Yep. That's the Bradley
Beal did it before him.
Yep, go on a bad team, kill on a bad team. When you're really not that good, your stats look inflated. That's what Jordan Poole about to do. Then get more money, then ask for a trade because you want to win now, supposedly.
Yeah. Right. To switch back to Brown's contract, though, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where Mike Conley was the highest paid player in the NBA. So, I mean, this happens when there's a cap spike. Even though this one's not like the type of cap spike we were talking about with like when KD signed with the Warriors, but like the TV deal is going to keep going up, foreseeably.
But this is like crippling to a team. I mean, between him and Tatum, they're going to be taking up something like 75% of the cap.
Yep. I think the issue.
The whole idea of like the original Bird rule was to keep your guys, but it wasn't like to keep your guys and give them half the franchise.
Yeah. Well, and now they've made it to where you can't really go over the cap. You can go over the cap, but you can't really get into luxury tax money with the new CBA. So it's really like, I think what's really on the horizon is they're going to have an expansion, right? You're going to have two more teams coming to the league. They're going to need to filter the league out a little bit and spread around the wealth. So I think they want parity, right? They don't want the super teams anymore.
Right.
And honestly, like, for the league, might be a good thing. But at the same time, I like to see guys stay with the team that drafted them as long as they can.
Oh, so do I. So do I. But I also like, I mean, basketball at its best was back when the Celtics had like 5 really good starters and a couple of really good bench players, and the Lakers had 5 really good starters and like 2 or 3 really good bench players that could have started for anybody else. I mean, the Lakers had guys like Bob McAdoo coming off the bench.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time,
and
the cap was looser.
The Celtics had Bill Walton coming off the bench.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cap was looser, right? I mean, the fact that they even got Larry Bird was kind of on the back of the NBA having really loose draft rules, right? I mean, they drafted him technically before he was even eligible. So like part of the reason those teams were so stacked was because the league wanted them to be stacked. It helped out the TV money if they had these two superpower teams that were going up against each other.
Right.
I mean, we kind of tried that out. The NBA tried that out again with the Warriors, and to some extent, it was good for the money. But at the same time, I think long term it hurt viewership because people knew who was going to win.
Yeah, true.
It was going to be the Warriors or the Cavs. That was it.
So Doc brought up Dame Lillard, which is our next topic, and we had Keith Pompey from Philadelphia Inquirer on last week, and he seemed sold. Doc, I was wishing you were going to be there. He seemed sold that Dame was, the answer to the Sixers' prayers. And of course, there has been no movement on the trade. Dame got scolded and his agent got scolded for, making it public that Miami was the only team he wanted to play for. And they're threatening to fine him, though the fine amounts are like insubstantial for somebody who's making $50 million a year. But I guess my question is, how much is, Keith used the words Dame was in the prime of his career. Now, statistically, you might say that. You might say he's in the prime of his career. But in actuality, he's 34 years old. And when he's 35 and 36, he's going to be making over $60 million a year. So not this year. He's going to be making, I think, close to 50, but still in the 40s. But it jumps up like 10 or more grand a year next year and the year after. That's got to be weighing on teams. I mean, for all we know, Dame Lillard could be shot at age 36, and you're going to have to pay him $60 million a year. Doc, what's your thoughts on A, him being the answers to the Sixers' prayers? B, nothing seems to be happening on the trade department. What do you think's going on there?
Well, one, in terms of him being the Sixers' prayers, the team looks at it like that because they need a closer. They never had a closer since last time they had it was with Jimmy Butler, and that was only for half a season. And that was probably like their best chance of going to the championship was that year. They lost by a crutcher player, I guess, Kawhi Leonard. That came down to Game 7, one shot left. But They beat Toronto, they won in that championship. So that's the best year they had when they had a closer. And that's only for half a season. So my problem is on which I was there too, ask Keith, what do you give up? I think if you try to give up Maxey and Harden and something else, I think that's too much. Like, I don't know. I don't think that you can trade your backcourt for one player that is 34 when I think Embiid's window and Lillard's window is probably like a year and maybe a year and a half. Like in terms of being dominant still. Embiid had they say he has best season last year, but in the playoffs you've seen that he was the same on Embiid and just nothing changed. And I think as Embiid get older, pimping a big man, he's going to start getting more injuries. He already got the MVP now, so he's not going to be as motivated to kill in the regular season. I think Embiid take a step back, and I think Lillard, him being 34 and still being a small guard going against Jason Tatum, I don't know. It still will be a competitive. I don't know. I do think it would be interesting. I do want the Sixers to do something because if they're going with the same team they got this year, they're not winning anything. So I think if you look at it from a standpoint of the Sixers got to do something, then I think that is the best trade to do if you feel like the Sixers got to do something.
Right. And do you think the money situation is what's holding up the Lillard being moved, or is it his demand on only going to Miami? And what do you think's holding things up there?
I think that it is. I think he just really want to be in Miami. Honestly, I think he want to be. Some players don't really like being having the spotlight on him their whole career. You know, that's just a fact. He had his spotlight on him his whole career. He felt like if he goes to Miami with a culture, it would still be like a team-oriented thing. You know, if the team lose, you know, nobody going to necessarily blame him. Like, you know, you still got other players. I feel like if you go to Philly, they're going to look at him like, okay, you better close every game. You know, I think it's just a different mindset. And also, Miami's a better city than Philly. You know, it's hard. I never saw a free agent I never saw someone really say, I want to go to Philly. You know, it's just a tough sell sometimes. You know, even though Philly's a major city, guys don't come to Philly. And that's just what it is. So I think Miami, him wanting to retire in Miami, it's a good spot. It's a better 360 than Portland. And him wanting to be in a culture. You know, he got a great culture. And the team will be better. I think he will win a championship with Miami. If we trade Maxey and James Harden for him, Miami got a way better chance of winning the championship if he go there than us.
Yeah. See, I don't want to give up Maxey, you know, to get 1 or 2 years out of Dame Lillard.
I agree with you.
See, the more I think about it, the more I kind of agree with Keith as far as like, it's really, you have to think of it, it's not necessarily Harden and Maxey. You're trading away Harden to get assets to trade with Maxey to get Lillard. And at this point, to me, Harden's like a negative to the team. So, I mean, anything that you can get out of a trade for Harden is a bonus.
I disagree there. I disagree that he was a negative last year, but I think he probably will.
No, I think he was a positive. Yeah, no, I think he's still a really good player, but if he doesn't want to play for the Sixers, he's a negative.
Right. Yeah, we've seen that before.
I just think,
we did it for Ben Simmons already. Harden must be traded. I don't know what this GM is doing. Okay, well, president of basketball operations, Morey, but you got to trade him. I don't care for what now. We can't not go into the year with Harden pulling a Ben Simmons. We just wait till the season.
Yeah. And here's the thing, you know, where he's asked to go, they just got Russell Westbrook for $2 million a year. And Russell Westbrook played great for them in the playoffs. Why would they want Harden too?
Yeah, I don't know why they want Harden, but they want him. They just don't want to trade him for Terrence Mann. That's insane. Harden should be disrespected. They said we will do the trade, just don't put Terrence Mann in the trade.
See, the Clippers, their cap sheet is a mess, man. I mean, they're paying like $11 million for Batum. Like they're paying all of these like double figure deals.
Covington's making around that much.
Covington, yeah, he's about $10 million. Marcus Morris, I think, is 17. So I think where they're really looking at is if we can turn some of these depth guys into one star level guy, that's going to be really good for their championship odds.
But nobody's going to want Batum or Covington or.
But here's the thing: if you could work out a 3-team deal there between the Clippers picks and a guy like Terrence Mann, the contract filler for them to take Harden, right? You're going to take back some combination of Morris, Batum, Covington, Norm Powell, another guy, he's making $18 million. You got to take back some combination of those guys. But if you're the Sixers, you want some young player, right? Whether that's Kobe Brown, whether that's Terrence Mann,
or both. I want both.
Right? You're going to want something in addition. On top of that, the thing is they need picks from the Clippers in order to then be able to turn around and make a Lillard trade possible. I mean, it's just the big issue with Lillard is like all the teams that want him don't have the assets to acquire him.
Right.
And all teams with the assets to acquire him don't want him right now. Right? They're all teams that are in some form of rebuild.
I feel Philly definitely has the assets. I'm just hesitant on trading Maxey. Like you can even trade Maxey and Tobias Harris and get Damian Lillard. But it's like, I feel like they would take that. I don't know. If they sold on Tyler Hero.
No, go ahead, Doc. Okay.
If they sold on Tyler Hero, they want, I don't know what the Blazers want. They said they didn't want Miami package.
I'm pretty sure they want at least 3 number ones, probably 4 number ones.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I think the issue with Maxey is whatever team gets him has to pay him. Right. So
they'll have to pay him
after
next year,
1 year.
not this year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's
But
not
you get 1 year to
necessarily.
look at him.
He has to make an all-star team, and he has to make some type of big climb. Like he has to, like he never, even though Maxey averaged 20, he don't really get awards like that. So he would have to do all-star. And I think if you want to get the Supermax, of course he got to get all pro, but he got to at least make an all-star to get that bread.
He's really close to qualifying for the rookie extension max.
Yeah,
he might actually already be qualified for it. So
What's the
he'd be
rookie
making,
extension max?
in theory, he would be making the Bane money on his next contract.
See, I rather personally, I rather just get rid of Harden and get some picks as opposed to giving away Maxey. I mean, that's what the Sixers did during the process. You know, they always tried to, you know, they draft a guy like Drew Holiday and then they trade him away. They draft a guy like who's Chicago's center?
Jahlil Okafor?
No. Well,
Their
yeah, they
current
drafted
center?
him too. The guy out of USC.
Nikola Vucevic.
Yeah,
Vucevic, yeah.
he was on the team. I mean, I'm not saying that he's, you know, gonna get you to the NBA championship, but we're talking about good players that have value. And, you know, they kept on, you know, it was, Holiday was a really good player and they got rid of him.
Yeah, I mean,
and I
feel like
I hate when you hit it in the draft, when you hit it and then you give it away for some kind of short-term gain that, you know, for a guy who is in the middle of his 30s and is, you know, probably one ankle twist away from his career being over, you know? I'm not saying because of a sprained ankle, but if Lillard blows out his knee, you know, at this age, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the Sixers can't really afford to do a rebuild if they're keeping Embiid.
Right.
So they're in that kind of situation where, you know, maybe 2 years of Lillard is worth it. You know, I think there's an argument to be had there, but I would really like to see them, you know, like don't haggle over Terrence Mann. Just take Norm Powell, take some more depth pieces, let Maxey run the show at point, and just have a little bit more depth on that team. They haven't had depth for years.
Right.
Who knows?
They haven't had depth for a few years. Yeah.
Should we hit one of our next questions? We got a little too Sixers focused there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's, you know, what I was looking at is some teams have some decisions to make in their overcrowded rosters. I got Charlotte, Clippers, OKC, San Antonio, and Washington. Let's start with Charlotte. Charlotte's got some issues here with PJ Washington. They have 3 guys basically that are restricted free agents: the Theo Maledon, PJ Washington, JT Thor. None of them which are signed, and yet they don't have. Apparently, they're worried about Cody Martin returning to full health, and yet they don't seem to have a shooting guard. Because, you know, Bouknight stunk it up in Summer League and Nick Smith was better, but still not ultra impressive. You know, I mean, actually Charlotte as a team looked horrible in Summer League. So what do you think's going on with PJ Washington, and what do you think this team should do? I mean, right now, you know, their best player in Summer League may have been Amari Bailey, and they have him on a 2-way. So
yeah, I mean, dude, I mean, all these teams have some really tough decisions to make. But the fact that PJ Washington's still not signed is crazy to me. I think he's such a talented forward. You know, he can score at all 3 levels. He can play pick and roll. He's a good short roll passer. You know, I think teams have to look at him and be a little bit worried though, because
does anybody have the cap room at this point though to sign him?
Not really. No. And again, the teams with cap room are the teams that have way too many guys rostered. So they're not signing anybody. They're just keeping the guy. They're trying to decide who's going to make their roster and who's not, who's going to get cut. Doc, what was your take?
Yeah, someone very close to the situation of Charlotte. It's a guy like he's one of the agents for one of those guys, but he told me that nobody respects Charlotte. So those guys is not getting money. So when you think of those guys wanting to ask for more money, but teams didn't reach out to them. So like a guy like Kelly Oubre who played for Charlotte, teams didn't respect what he did with Charlotte. So him asking for that amount of money, they didn't view him as that type of player. They wanted to give him way less. So now time passed and all these Charlotte guys aren't signed because teams don't look at what they did at Charlotte as impressive. They just don't respect Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, this team just seems to be, there was a point where you'd look at their roster and say, wow, there's so much talent there. And, kind of now you're like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose if Brandon Miller does what we think, he should, and Miles Bridges can behave himself and returns to normal, Gordon Hayward can stay healthy, Ball can stay healthy, but there's a lot of and Cody Martin, returns to health. But there's a lot of ifs there, So, and they still, for all their draft picks, and all their swings at it, Bryce McGowan's, Book Knight, Nick Smith, and Terry Rozier. I mean, they still to this day still don't really have a true shooting guard, I mean, Terry Rozier right now is your best bet, and he's also your best bet for backup point guard. But yeah, we'll move on. How about Oklahoma City? They have an interesting dilemma in the fact that, goodness gracious, I mean, they right now, Ty Washington, fourth on their depth chart. Garuba, fourth on their depth chart. They're talking about possibly getting rid of cutting outright Jeremiah Robinson Earl. I mean, what do you think their second? I mean, I think Dang, showed that he's ready to take the next step. They signed Mikic from the 2 years ago, EuroLeague MVP. How do you see this the backup shaping up on this team?
Yeah, I feel like their team just got a bunch of everything, but they just young. I don't know. I feel like they just need I really want them at one point. They're gonna have to trade some of these guys and get more veteran leadership probably. And if they trying to compete, I don't know. I think they try to imitate a little bit of what the old OKC was, but I don't know. I don't really see a KD, Harden, Westbrook. I mean, Sha is one of them, but still got to see Chet play. And then I don't see nobody else I like Giddey, but I don't think Giddey is like a Harden. I think Giddey's like a solid basketball player. I don't think Giddey's gonna make an All-Star. So, I mean, I think their team is just confusing to me because they just got a whole bunch of young guys and still a whole bunch of picks, and I don't know the direction they're looking for. I don't know if they looking for that one or those two big superstars, and we'll see. I mean, I like Sha, but I think Sha need another one of those guys got turned into that all-star superstar for that dynasty they want to be complete.
Is Usman Jang? Is he the guy? Is he the guy, Cam?
As far as what? As
being number three, being the number, like the big three,
to step up,
being Shea, Chet, and Jang.
I think it's Jalen Williams.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I mean he's second in Rookie of the Year voting. Had a really productive year, but I like the way their roster is constructed. I like the fact that they're one of the more efficient offensive teams without a true point guard. Especially like the way they played offense was very like kind of reminiscent of like a Kings or a Warriors type of offense,
Mhm.
where everybody's sort of touching the ball, it's moving around a whole lot. I mean, to me, the guys that I wouldn't move on that team, obviously Shea, Chet, I wouldn't move just yet. Giddey, Jalen Williams, Jang. Outside of that, I think everybody is gettable for me.
Right. And I guess my question is, who's gonna? Because you see a lot of talent there. It's just like,
There's a ton of talent.
right, there's a ton of talent, but if they make the wrong decision, they might be giving away a really good player. And if they make the right decision 2 or 3 years from now, they may have a stacked roster.
So my thing is, they should be looking to win now,
Yes.
right? Like, it's pretty easy to kind of make fun of what the Rockets did in free agency as far as like going out and getting Van Vliet and Dylan Brooks and paying them big money. But you have this really kind of cool timeline where if things don't work out with Brooks and Van Vliet, then their contracts are going to be up by the time you have to start making decisions on your young guys, right? And in the meantime, you can keep signing them with bird rights. But I mean, just looking at their cap sheet, obviously Shea's making, good money. He kind of got screwed because he would definitely qualify for the Supermax now, and he does not currently have one and won't be up for contract again until 2027.
Oh, geez.
But he's making 33 this next year. Behind him, Bertans' contract at 17 and Lugens Dort at 15 million. Chet Holmgren is the 4th highest paid player, and he's on his rookie deal.
Wow.
So they don't have any contract in house. They have a ton of guys that are making 5-6 million because they're first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Now's the time that you can, like, the issue is now they have guys like Pokuševski, Jeremiah Robinson Earl's a good example. Guys that they brought in on potential with picks that now they can't afford to really extend because they don't really know if they're worth it, and B, don't want to capitalize or don't want to give up cap to guys that they can't, then use that cap to sign the guys that they're really committed to.
Right.
So I mean, like, I was looking at it too, like they have so many picks coming in, they have to get off of these picks because they can't just keep filtering guys in. It's just not going to work out with their cap sheet. They won't be able to maintain the sort of max level contracts. When
I guess that was my point. I mean, you go all the way down to 4th string, and you're looking at first round picks.
Yeah,
Lottery guys.
It hurts their
Lottery
value.
Guys.
It hurts their value because they're not going to play.
Right.
I mean, they're going
and
to.
it also hurts you because you can't evaluate them. You can't evaluate them.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I was playing around with them a whole lot and like trade machines, and they can do anything they want. Any team that is looking for picks, I think this is a good destination for a guy like Hero. Say Miami can't work it out with Portland. Portland doesn't want to take on Tyler Hero. They really want picks. Okay, well, let's work out a deal with, OKC. We'll bring in Dort as a replacement for a guy like Hero, make up that value in picks, and then all of a sudden, Miami could trade something like 5 or 6 first round picks instead of, 2, which is what they can really do right now.
Right.
I just think, like, OKC could, spend some of the pick equity, get off of maybe one of their young guys, and still, bring in a guy that's probably a plus to their team long term, and they can still target young guys because they can trade picks. They can trade as many picks as they want.
What about them bringing in somebody like Siakam?
Yeah, I mean, they could totally do that. I don't know if
they'd probably be far more interested
immediately, but I think by the trade deadline he'll be available.
Right, but they're probably far more interested in somebody like him than Dame or Harden.
Yeah, they want somebody that's on their timeline.
Yeah,
I imagine. Could they go and get a 30-year-old guy that's ready to contribute in a major way? Sure. Siakam would be a better fit. A guy like OG Anunoby would be a better fit. I think Hero would be a better fit. Somebody that's closer to that timeline, but, is making a little bit more in contract. It can be tradable down the line if they don't like the guy or they need to move him. I just think now's kind of the time for them to do it.
To do some consolidation with picks
Yeah.
and maybe with some of the extra talent they have on their current roster.
Totally.
Which basically equate to picks because they're so young.
Yeah.
So the next topic I want to discuss is there are a bunch of teams that are kind of have these glaring holes on their roster, and they don't seem to be doing anything about it. And I don't expect everybody to talk about every team, but I'll just go over some of the examples I saw. Boston, for example, really has no depth. No depth. I mean, for beyond, like, say, the first 8 players. And then they got nothing. Cleveland still doesn't really have a third center. Golden State doesn't really have a second center, and probably could use another. Even if they brought in a second center, they probably could still use another big on top of that. Houston is just added. Houston signed a bunch of guys on Exhibit 10s and 2-ways, and yet they're still only rolling with 2 centers. Same with the Lakers. They could use another big. Milwaukee doesn't have a backup point guard. They don't. They just don't have one. The Knicks don't have a legitimate backup power forward. Toronto, they just signed a couple of people, but yet they don't really have a legit Toronto's guards. I keep on harping on this. But Toronto's guards, their real legitimate guards, are Schroeder, Anunoby, and Gary Trent, and Malachi Flynn, who has really done nothing yet in the league. Those are their guards. So, and you can really say, Anunoby, is he really a guard? Is he really the guy you want at shooting guard? He's more of a small forward. So really, they only have Schroeder and Gary Trent and Malachi Flynn, and that's it. And yet they don't have anybody else on the right now on our depth chart because they have so many forwards. We have Otto Porter as their third shooting guard. And we have Jeff Downington as their third point guard, and he's not even on a guaranteed contract. A couple other clubs, one more club is Phoenix. Phoenix, I mean, my God, is this team really going to go to war? Let's see. Hold on a second here. I'm having trouble with my Phoenix. Phoenix right now will start Josh Okogie at one of the wing spots, and their backup point guard is Jordan Goodwin. They really want to go to battle with that. So I guess what I'm asking you is, there are guys out there like Christian Wood, Kelly Oubre, and there are teams that have overflowing rosters like San Antonio and Oklahoma City. What are these teams that have these glaring holes waiting for? I mean, you could understand it if it's the Heat or the Trailblazers, who really do have sparse rosters right now, but I think they're waiting to see what happens. And even you could probably put the Sixers in that category too, though their roster is pretty full. But the Sixers, actually, you could throw that in there. I mean, they really don't have a power forward on the team that can shoot a lick. So let's throw the Sixers in there. But you know why the Sixers aren't moving, because they're waiting to see what's going to happen in the trade market. But some of these other teams, they just need to fill out their rosters, and yet they're not doing it. So my question is, what do you think is going on, Doc?
Yeah, it is a lot of teams missing stuff, but I think a lot of these teams go through the season and just play with what they have, and then see what will happen. I know the Sixers is one of those teams who always never had a bench. The Warriors kind of never really played their centers anyway. Looney gets some type of run when a matchup is there, but they rather not even use some. That's why they got rid of Wiseman. They didn't even care about him. So I think the NBA now is just a 8 8-player league now anyway. I don't think teams use all their players. I mean, they should do the health reasons, but a lot of these teams, the same 8 players get played. And if you're looking at playoffs, those are 8 players that play in the playoffs, or 7 sometimes. So I think with the new NBA, how guys want to play more and they want to pad their stats, I just think that's probably like one of the reasons too. But a lot of teams don't really play the traditional, oh, I need a backup center, I need a backup 2 guard. You know, a lot of these guys play different positions anyway. Like look at, for example, Anthony Davis. He should be a center, but he cries and say he wants to play power forward. So they would put a center there and he play power forward, you know. Mo Bamba could be their backup center and he could just play center, but the way how a lot of these guys be positionless now, a lot of these, it just changes everything. 6 with Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is a small forward, but they put this guy at power forward a lot. You know, I don't think it's a traditional way of having 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, 2 small forwards, 2 power forwards, 2 centers no more. I just think it just go by rhythm, honestly.
Well, let's just talk about Milwaukee, all right? Or especially Milwaukee. You know, I mean, really, right now, they have a roster that has 19 guys on it. And I'm counting Drew Timme because he's supposed to sign an Exhibit 10. And out of those 19 guys who are, you know, of the ones that are legitimate basketball players, NBA basketball players, I should say, only 2 of them are ball handlers. Drew Holiday and Giannis. And Giannis, we know that, you know, you don't want to have him, you know, constantly handling the ball. You know he's going to miss some games. Drew Holiday is getting up there in years. He's showing signs of slowing down. You would think for a team with NBA championship aspirations would at least have a third guy on the roster who can actually handle the ball.
Yeah, like I said, but I feel like it's a different time now. I feel like they're looking at it like Giannis, he's going to play 46 out of 48 minutes anyway. And then you still got Drew Holiday who can handle the ball. I just don't think they look at it the way traditionally how it used to be. I just don't think it's like that anymore.
I'm just thinking you're going to wear those guys out. You know, 82 games, you can't have 2 ball handlers. Cam?
So, I mean, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, these teams are clearly going to have to fill some of these holes. You know, in some cases, like the Lakers, you know, I think we're going to see a lot more Anthony Davis at center. You know, with Cleveland, I think they're happy to play the guys that they have major minutes. But yeah, I mean, Milwaukee, they need a guard desperately. Toronto needs a guard desperately. Phoenix needs a guard. And to me, I think some of it kind of goes back to, you know, in a lot of cases, these are teams that are competing, you know, for a championship, or at least for a deep playoff run.
Right.
It kind of goes back to our last question, where there's these teams that have to make some really tough decisions and cut some guys. You know, if I'm Milwaukee, I have 1 roster spot and I need a guard. Why would I drop that money on Kelly Oubre, who, like we said, just played, you know, a nothing year in Charlotte, when I could go and get Isaiah Joe, who actually shot like 40% from 3 and can handle.
But Isaiah Joe is not going to do that with Milwaukee Bucks, though. See, it's not that many
on their
guys
depth
in the
chart.
NBA.
Yeah,
Not that
he
many
would
guys
on their
in the
depth
NBA.
chart.
It's different. Guys go to certain teams and probably handle the ball. He's not going to come to Milwaukee and his role is going to be to catch and shoot. That's how that's what it is.
No,
Like,
it would
think
totally be
about
different.
every team. No, I don't see. I bet
But,
you,
like,
no matter what
here's
team
my
you go
thing,
to.
though. Like, am I gonna be better served spending this 1 roster spot on a guy like, let's say, who else could get cut? I mean, say you need a center, you could get Pokusevski for nothing.
Yeah.
Young player, 7 foot, can actually handle the ball a little bit.
Or Garuba, who's just the opposite of Pokusevski, because one's all offense and one's all defense.
Totally. With the Spurs, Devontae Graham could get cut pretty easily.
Yeah. Especially
Blake Wesley, I wouldn't be shocked if he got cut. I mean, even Campaign, I wouldn't be shocked if he got cut from the Spurs. These are all like, if not like, I mean, Devontae Graham has been a spot starter. Cameron Payne's been a spot starter. There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to come available just because of, overstuffed rosters that are well worth that minimum deal. And they're going to be desperate to sign a deal as quickly as they can if they get cut.
See, I understand what Doc is saying, but I mean, I think a smart general manager, no matter what his style is, and if he only wants to go with 8, he's got to think worst case scenario. That's why if I'm running the team, I want a guy in my third string that at least I can count on not to be a total disaster. I don't want a rookie who just got done shooting 28% from the floor as my backup point guard,
but he's not going to play. You just saw that just this year with Denver.
I said worst case scenario. Yes, he's not going to play, but I'm going to think worst case scenario. This guy's going to get hurt. He's going to miss 20 games. This guy's going to miss 10 games. That's the way I think you need to think.
I mean, even
Denver
go down to the
championship. Denver only had 2 ball handlers, honestly. Reggie Jackson didn't even get in the game. Honestly,
they didn't need the ball handlers.
But playoffs is different.
Why they didn't need the ball handlers? Because they got Jokic, right? They got
Jokic,
right,
totally.
And they got Giannis. So I'm saying just because just because a team view Giannis as their Jokic, they're gonna run through him. So they're not looking at it. We need another third ball handler because he's not gonna ever get in the game because he's never gonna have the ball in his hands because we already got Jrue Holiday who's out off guard. I just don't think every team has 2 ball handlers. I don't know what team really has 3. I really don't know what team has 3.
Well,
Sixers don't have 3.
The Knicks have about 6 guys that can handle the ball, but they don't have any. They don't have anybody can play power forward behind Randall.
OKC has like 4 ball handlers.
They didn't make the playoffs.
They could have.
Oh my! How they could have?
They kind of decided not to actually.
Oh, okay.
Their record
this year?
Yeah.
No, they're not.
I wouldn't be shocked.
They didn't make the playoffs. There's no team made the playoffs had 3 ball handlers, honestly, that even played.
See, I really think that you should have 3 good, no matter who your star is, whether it's LeBron, Jokic, Giannis, they're going to be the guys holding the ball, but I still think you want a good point guard playing along with him, and you want a decent backup point guard, and you also want a shooting guard that can play point guard. So like Atlanta kind of the way their depth chart is kind of the way I would build my backcourt,
and Atlanta was bad.
I know Atlanta was bad, but I'm just giving you an example of what I think is a perfect scenario.
It's more their personnel than it is like
everybody thought Atlanta
the way
was
it's constructed.
Everybody thought Atlanta was going to be the team to beat before the year started. They started the year and they flunked. That backcourt did not work, and everybody started calling Trae Young trash. It does not, bro. You don't need 2 ball hand. I mean, you don't need 3.
I don't know.
For sure.
I think that's an Atlanta issue. I think we were even talking about before the season last year that we didn't think that was going to be a good team. But I mean, realistically, you should have multiple people who can handle the ball on a team. Yeah. You can't have one guy go out and then you're screwed, because that's what the Bucks would be. If Jrue Holiday gets hurt, they're screwed. Because then it's Giannis. Right. You have to play every minute of every game, and you're going to play point guard.
Right, but that's why I think Golden State. That's why I think Golden State made a brilliant move of bringing in Chris Paul.
Oh God,
they're not brilliant, but I think it'll help them out a little bit. I'm sure.
All right. We'll move on. We're going to move on to the mailbag. We haven't done the mailbag for weeks, or at least a few weeks, and we have a couple questions that carried over from previous shows, and we have a couple new ones. So Gerald from Connecticut asked, what was your biggest all-time miss when it came to draft evaluations, either someone you didn't think much of that ended up being really good, or someone that you were very high on and accounted to nothing in the league? Doc, I know you're not a draft evaluator, but is there somebody you ever, I'm going to throw it at you two ways. One, was there ever somebody you thought was really going to be a really good player and turned out to be a bust, and somebody that you thought was really going to be a good player? You told everybody was going to be a good player, but he didn't really get drafted high.
To answer the first question, you had two players. One, you guys probably don't know this name, but his name was Shamari Pons. He played.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he played with St. John's. I still think today, for the NBA is so much politics. If he never went to St. John's, he would be in the NBA. He had great games at St. John's. I don't know why
Duke.
He didn't get drafted.
He used to chew up Duke every year.
Chew up, yes, and beat them. He had 37 versus. I don't get it. Maybe Chris Mullins didn't put in enough good work. And then the other guy is on the Clippers bench right now. I don't know when he ever going to play. He used to play with Bronny in high school. BJ Boston.
BJ, right.
Yeah, BJ Boston. I thought BJ Boston would be a star, but he doesn't get
he still could be. I mean, he's what? He's only like 21, 20.
Yeah, but he doesn't play.
He's on the wrong team. He's on a team that never plays. Yeah.
Young guys.
Right.
And what was your second question?
Well, the second one was somebody you really, really liked, but wasn't really considered high, didn't go high in the draft, and he turned out to be as good as you thought he was going to be, but nobody else thought so.
Draymond Green.
Yeah. Good one.
I love him seeing, him, Lansing. That was my Michigan State team was my favorite team.
Yep. Yeah. I love Draymond too. Wasn't doing draft evaluations back then though. How about you, Cam?
Let's see. This guy just really stands out in my head because I love his game. As far as college ball, I'm a big Michigan State guy, big Tom Izzo guy. I loved Adrian Payne coming out of college.
Yeah.
That dude was like Kevin Garnett light.
Yeah.
Like Walmart brand Kevin Garnett. And I love that his game. He could shoot the three, play really good defense, major hustle, long arms. Unfortunately, of course, he was out of the league within a couple of years, and then obviously he got killed not too long ago. He got shot.
I did not know that.
He passed away really young. Adrian Payne was a big guy for me. That's like one of my big ones. I thought he was going to be awesome. The guy that I was not high on that ended up being really good, and based off of what a couple of people have said, is Shea. I was not a Shea guy. I'd seen him play live 2 or 3 times too, and I just didn't see it with him. So I was still in college at that time, so I saw some big games of him against UT, and I didn't think he was a primary ball handler. I didn't think he had really any kind of bag at all, which is funny because that's what people talk about now is his bag. It's huge. That real herky-jerky kind of game to him.
His very first game, I'll never forget his very first game. He was the reason why they lost. I thought he was going to be a bum. I'll never forget that. This one was in college. I wrote underneath his IG picture, said, "You're a bum. Get off the tee." He made them lose. It was their first game of the season. He made me so mad. He was a freshman. He made me so mad. I forgot if I could Google the first game, but it was his fault. He did some bonehead plays at the end. He made me so mad.
Yeah,
I didn't think Shaw was gonna be good either.
I didn't see it with him, and then that draft came around, and it was Jerry West was obsessed with him.
Yeah,
it was oh my God, we have to get him. We have to get him. I'm like, what are you doing? No. And I mean, obviously, it turned out the way it has. He's an All NBA guard. He was in MVP voting. It's 30 a game, easy. It's crazy. A guy that I liked, that I knew would be good, was Jamal Murray. I loved him in college, and this is exactly where I thought he would be. Just a scoring guard that can do a little bit of playmaking, isn't a total negative on defense because he's a little bit bigger, pretty good quickness. Love that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, Adrian Payne's my big miss. That one still hurts.
Right. Since I do this year in and year out, I don't have a straight answer for you, but I'll give you some of the over the last few years. Not to immediate years, but going like maybe five years back, Jarrett Culver. I mean, the dude is like out of the league now. And I thought he was a top 5 talent. Never underestimate the ability of not being able to shoot. But a guy I liked that same year, thought it was first round pick. I thought he was probably going to be just outside the lottery. He wasn't, but I think if they did that draft today, he might be up there, and that's Nick Claxton. Now, I think Claxton's probably a little played out of position right now with the Nets. I don't think he's a center, but yeah. Another draft was Shea. I was on the Shea train. Now, I don't know where he was on draft boards that year, but I definitely had him high, like somewhere between 10 and 15. But the guy I'm most proud of in that draft is Brunson. And I can safely say I was the only guy that had Brunson as a first round talent. No other draft board. I mean, for a while, he wasn't even showing up on big boards. But the guy I totally whiffed on in that same draft was Elie Okobo out of France. I thought he was definitely had the speed, quickness, and athleticism to do it. Again, another guy who really couldn't shoot. And probably the most surprising guy is going back all the way, I think it's 2017, is Josh Jackson. I mean, I know he hung around in the league for a while. I think last year was his first year out. But, he seemed to have everything. But again, couldn't shoot. You're seeing a commonality. And the guys that I hit with can shoot. And the guy I hit with in that draft was Derek White, who I had rated as a first-round talent. I guess he actually turned out to be a first-round pick, didn't he? Toward the end?
I think he was, yeah.
Like 30 or something? Yeah,
so
I had him somewhere between 25 and 30 on my board. But I don't think everybody did. So they would be my answers. By the way, Shamori Pons was another guy I really liked. And I was shocked, Doc, that draft when he didn't get drafted. And I think, find out later was teams were not really impressed with the shape he came to. I mean, as a point guard, he ended up having the highest body fat of all participants in that draft. And as a point guard, that's horrible. And he really performed poorly at all the drills at the combine. Like he was just like a little bowling ball. And Shamori's playing in Europe. And he still probably right now is in the prime of his career. But I think what they saw was they were afraid. He was also a guy, and you'll see this happen a lot in college. Guys who dominate the ball at college, and the guys in the pros can't see them doing anything but. What are you going to do? What's this guy going to do when you take the ball out of his hands? Doesn't play defense. Shamori wasn't the greatest passer. He was really a score first point guard. But I think being out of shape and not being a great passer is and not being a great defender is what worked out against him. So. All right, let's move on to question number 2. Ryan W. says, every day we keep waiting for the ball to drop over and over. We see stories about Lillard and Harden being traded, but nothing happens. In your guys' opinions, which players are most likely to be traded before the season starts out? He gives us lots of options. Lillard, Harden, Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, Tyler Hero, DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, Jonas Valanciunas, and Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, Brown can't be traded now, right? Yeah, so this question was before the extension. Wow. Well, what do you think? What do you think, Doc? Who do you think is going to be traded there first?
Whoever demands a trade, I guess. I don't know.
Well, Harden and Lillard obviously already have. Everybody
demand a trade hasn't really forced their hand. I mean, these guys are just saying they want traded. I don't know what they really want. I don't know what Harden wants. I don't even know why Harden wants to be traded, honestly. And Damian Lillard wants to just go to one team. That's not fair. So until these guys realistically tell people what they want and looking for, then I don't know. I really don't know who gets traded first. Honestly, I hope it's Harden because I'm a Sixers fan. Well, other than that, I really don't know.
Yeah, I think the first one to go on this list is going to be Lillard. Now, people like Hero and Siakam could all be part of some kind of, 5-team trade that involves Lillard transaction, but that would be my guess because I don't think there's any pressing need to trade anybody else.
I mean, it's tough. It's like, see, the thing is, the Blazers aren't really in a rush to trade Lillard. I think.
What are they waiting for? His value is only going down as the days progress.
Well, as contracts start to open up, there's going to be more options as to guys they could trade for, right? Once the free agency restrictions get lifted, recently traded restrictions get lifted.
That's true.
So they're going to want to maximize whatever they can get. So that they might have a little patience on that one. I mean, the Sixers should try and get rid of Harden before the season, in my mind, but I think that's going to be a hard trade to work out. I feel like the most likely guy is Siakam. Just because there's not like this huge trade buzz around him. It's not like I think it's pretty clear he's unhappy in Toronto.
Right.
Like he's definitely on board with the trade. I feel like he even may have asked for one at some point during COVID, like the 2021 season or so. Didn't get it. But yeah, man, I just think he's such a valuable player. He can contribute in so many different ways. Like, he's worth his deal. And I think that the Raptors are ready to tank. I think they're ready to just.
Well, what about though? I mean, with Lillard and Harden, they actually have the pieces to actually, with him to get I could see the Sixers definitely doing Harden for Siakam or some variation of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that the Raptors are in a place where they can do anything with a guy like Harden. I just don't think they can compete.
Well, they
with
don't
their
have
current roster.
One of the reasons why they can't compete is because they don't have anybody who can shoot. They need some guards that can shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to get younger. I think they need to try and just build a team around Scotty Barnes, which their current team is not well suited for his play style at all. I think they're better off going like a traditional tank route where they trade OG and Siakam. And
apparently
OG's
off the table, and I don't blame him. I mean, he's not making a lot of money, and he's a really good 3-and-D guy. I mean, totally. Obviously he not the greatest 3 player, but he on the D end, he's ideal. So
yeah, with a young guy like him, I think you got to think that you can get more for him down the road. But I think Siakam is who he's going to be.
Right.
I think now is a good time to move on from him.
Yeah, good point.
And again, like, it's low key, right? There's not this huge, sort of media storm around it. It's going to be easier to trade him.
Yeah, this is true. All right. Moving on to our next question. Question 3. Chris wants to know, where did you guys hear that Kyle Neptune trashed Cam Whitmore during the draft process? Is the source credible? Neptune saying that doesn't make any sense, meaning trashing Whitmore doesn't make any sense. Well, I can answer this. I didn't hear it. First I heard of it was from our own Drew Barton. That's who I heard it from. Since Drew wasn't going to be able to be on the show, I looked into it, and apparently the story came from, and I'll give you the guy's name. He was on a podcast, and his name was Ryan Russillo, and he said it on Bill Simmons' podcast. So, but no sources, no nothing here. He just said it on a podcast, and then it became reality. Of course, the story about why Whitmore's draft stock dipped, has changed, leading up to the draft and like the week after the draft, or, the story seemed to change on a daily basis. Doc, do you know anything about this Neptune rumor and this Ryan Russillo guy?
No, I never. This is the first time you hearing about this.
Huh. Yeah.
Sorry, God. Been in football mode.
No, that's okay. This is actually an old question. This was all around draft time. It was like in summer league time, people were talking about this, and these are questions that we've gotten over the last few weeks. We haven't done the mailbag in a while, so this is an older question. So we're gonna wake Jake up, who's been sleeping during our NBA section, to get his take on this question from Chris about Kyle Neptune. What do you make of this whole situation, Jake?
So I actually talked about this on my pod the other night, because we had touched on that Cam Whitmore obviously won Summer League MVP. I don't know where this came from. I haven't heard a bad thing said about Cam Whitmore up until that report came out. Right. And then Kyle Neptune got on a television station in Houston where they asked him about Cam Whitmore, and all he did for a few minutes was speak very glowingly about him and his work ethic and the type of person and the type of player that he was. So I don't know where this came from. I still have yet to find a true source. I don't know who said this, if this came from someone in Villanova, which I don't imagine it would. Did it come from an NBA team, from a scout? I have no idea where this came from. I don't think it's credible. If you saw him play in Summer League, and I get it, it's Summer League, a Summer League MVP at the end of the day, whatever. They got a trophy and they got rings for Summer League now, which I think is garbage. They should use that money elsewhere. But that's besides the point. You saw his power, his athleticism. He averaged 3 steals a game. He was making threes. He was knocking down tough shots off the dribble. You saw everything that you wanted to see from Cam Whitmore, almost to the point, Rich, where you said, I wonder what made this guy fall that far. He's way better than 20. I have no idea where this came from. I don't think it's credible, and I think it might have come from somebody that doesn't watch basketball. Because if you watch,
I think it could have been made up.
I don't know. Seemed like
I think somebody who maybe wanted to hurt Villanova might have made it up. It could have even come from the Whitmore camp. Maybe he got wind that maybe he was dropping. And I don't know. I don't know, but I will say this: if there's any validity, or even if there isn't any validity, if I'm the athletic director of Villanova, I'm looking at this long and hard, because there's no way Villanova can afford, if it is true, Villanova can't afford to have Kyle Neptune as their head coach, because recruiting-wise, it will crush Villanova. If something like this is proven to have happened or happens in the future. Do you not agree that this would kill them in recruiting?
No, I do agree that it's a really, really bad look, but I have no reason to believe that Kyle Neptune said anything about this. And I'll tell you what, I have a friend who's an assistant coach in the D1 college ranks, and he said to me, like, if we get a call from a friend that wants to bring in a transfer, if one of our players in the portal, and he calls me and he asks me, he goes, I'm not going to lie, because that doesn't help either of us. But that doesn't – Kyle Neptune didn't seem to me like he ever said a bad word about the guy. And then with the medicals too. So to answer your question, yes, that would hurt recruiting a ton if they find out that a first-year head coach goes behind a potential top 3 picks back and forces and helps a fall like that in the draft. It looks terrible.
Looks terrible because it's one thing to be honest with your fellow coaches about transfers. It's another thing to be honest with NBA scouts. Now you might, oh boy, I'll tell you what, if he said this to a scout or a GM and it got publicized to, Woj or whatever, that scout or GM, nobody's ever going to tell him anything ever again. You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm going to be honest with you and then my name's going to get dropped, because you're going to punish me for being honest. But I would think if from a coach's standpoint, did it make sense for you if an NBA guy is to basically talk glowingly about your guy, because the higher he's drafted, the more money he makes, the better it looks for the university.
Yes. That's
the better it looks for that coach. I produced a top 5 pick.
100%.
Not a top 20 pick.
That's what makes this even harder to believe why all this came out or why Kyle Neptune would have said something like this. Because it doesn't help, and it doesn't help Kyle Neptune, and it doesn't help Villanova. It doesn't help. There's nothing good that will come out of that if he were to trash him and say something like that. So I still am trying to figure out where this came from, why it came out at the 11th hour and conveniently happened right before the draft. And they said, "Oh, the medicals." He had a thumb injury that he had to get. I think he got surgery on early in the season. Came back way earlier than expected, produced at a high level right away without much of a ramp-up period, and then he had a knee injury in high school. And you're telling me about medicals? Like, why wasn't anybody talking about this sooner?
Well, then after that, the story was that he had poor workouts, that he was lackadaisical at his workouts, and they never made it quite clear, was it, that he gave a poor impression. And, it's depending on how it was worded, it made you sound like maybe he didn't impress them in the interviews, or maybe he didn't impress them on the court. It was never really clear. And then all of a sudden, it was because he was trashed by Kyle Neptune.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know where this came from. I don't think it's believable. I don't think it's credible. I don't know how this got out there. I'm still confused by it.
Right. And if you would know, for those of you folks who don't know, Jake is Mr. Basketball in Philadelphia. And also, by the way, he always refers to his podcast, but he doesn't say the name of his podcast. It's the Big Five podcast, folks. So check, if you can't get enough of Jake, listen to him over there as well.
Very
all
nice.
Right, Jake, you could go back to napping.
Okay.
See you next week.
Yes, sir.
Cam, do you know anything about this story?
I mean, I can tell you a little bit about Ryan Russillo. I mean,
okay,
he's a pretty well-respected NBA guy. He has a radio background, so I doubt that he would, kind of pull something like that out of his ass. Definitely a guy that, especially on the Bill Simmons podcast, which has a huge following, obviously, he's not gonna just throw something out there unless he has a legit source. So I mean, what constitutes trashing, I think, is the bigger question here.
Right.
Is it, Cam Whitmore's lazy? Cam Whitmore doesn't care about the game. Cam Whitmore doesn't work on his game. He's got a bad attitude. Or is it just like, man, he could have been so much better, but he wouldn't listen to my offensive scheme. There's a billion different things that could be interpreted as trashing.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously some people have said that he literally just didn't respond to any kind of questioning as far as, interview process background for Cam Whitmore. And that's considered trashing.
Right. Okay, so here's the quote on the podcast. He says, Kyle Neptune wasn't exactly talking him up. That's what he says.
So, I think the thing is, Neptune's not necessarily used to having these big name prospects. He probably got a call from somebody that was doing background on Whitmore and was like, "Hey, yeah, he's good." He didn't sell this team on oh my God, Cam Whitmore is going to be the next Jimmy Butler.
Right.
That's what teams probably expect to hear from college coaches. When they call about a top 5 prospect, I want to hear this guy's a psychotic gym rat that shoots 400 shots in his sleep before he shows up to the gym,
Right.
That's what they want to hear about these guys. So is that trashing that, he was like, yeah, he's a good player. He's fine.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move on to our final question, which is Daniel wants to know. This is not only a funny question, but it's also political. I think this is the first political question we ever got, but I think it's more of a joke. Daniel wants to know, why is Kyle Anderson playing for China in the World Cup? Were there no open roster spots on the Russian or North Korean teams?
All right, Rich, we already pissed off Canada. I don't know if we want to piss off this list of countries.
Well, the thing of it is, and the point of the question is United States is not friendly with any of those countries, and I guess from a certain perspective, one could say Kyle Anderson's not being very patriotic by playing for China. Any thoughts there? I mean, that's what I would take from this.
Well, so I mean, Kyle Anderson has Chinese citizenship now, so I think he's being
is he
very
Chinese?
patriotic.
Is he
He's
Chinese?
part Chinese, yeah.
I
So
did not
there's
know
a
that.
I never,
yeah,
I
so
never knew that.
he actually
Wow.
reconnected with the section of his family that is still in China and has remained in China and are fully Chinese. And he visited China, I think it would have been last off season. So this is something that's kind of been in the works.
Gotcha.
But it is kind of funny. I feel like this is like when people found out 21 Savage was British. like, okay,
Well,
you could have
actually
probably found
born
out
here.
on Wikipedia. Yeah, but also he was British.
He was actually born
it's
here.
yeah, straight up. Yeah, but it just kind of makes me laugh.
So
That people
he
are
just-
like, "Oh,
he-
Kyle Anderson's a traitor." He wasn't playing for Team USA anyway. What do you want?
Right, that's true. He wasn't going to be playing for, well, probably wasn't going to be playing for Team USA. But sometimes, guys just like hook on to whatever country, like goes like 8 generations back. Oh yeah, my great grandfather who ate dinner in Denmark once, so I'm going to go play for the Danish team. But so you're saying it's not that he's got relatives in China? Okay, so that's good. And Daniel, now you know where to send your questions. You'll get a straight and honest and accurate answer. Thank you, Cam. Wow, I'm educated as well. Well, that's it for the questions, folks. We appreciate them. It was fun to do the mailbag again. If you'd like to send us a question, please email it to admin@hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions via social media, on Twitter @hoopsprospects, on Instagram @thehoopsprospects, and on Facebook @hoopspros. As always, I want to thank all of our listeners, and I want to thank our special guest, Bent Leuchten, for joining us. That was great to have him on. And if you ever missed an episode, by the way, folks, you can always get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. I want to thank Jake for joining us. I want to thank Cameron for joining us. I want to thank Doc for joining us, and I hope he feels better. I know he's got a football game to cover tomorrow. Is that the Hall of Fame game, Doc?
Yeah, the Hall of Fame game, also the dinner and the ceremony on Saturday.
Oh, my goodness. Are you getting enough sleep?
Not really.
Yeah, right. It also, allergies have been horrible around the country, so especially in the East. So maybe that's affecting you. But anyway, I'm sure people don't want to hear me try to diagnose your health problems. Anyway, feel better, Doc. It's good having you back. And we'll believe it or not, folks, we're basically going every other week, but we are going to be back next week to cover start our conference previews. We're going to be doing the Big Sky, Big West, and WAC conferences, and we should have another guest from one of those conferences. So look for that episode next week. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Nope.
No, that's it, Rich. Let's call it there.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Good seeing you.